Okay, so today we're diving into a book that honestly completely flips the script on what it means to be wealthy. It's called The Millionaire Next Door, and I'm telling you, its findings might just change how you think about money forever.
But first, let me ask you something. When I say the word millionaire, what's the first picture that pops into your head? No, seriously, take a second. Got it? Okay, hold on to that image.
I'm willing to bet you pictured something like this, right? Luxury cars, designer clothes, huge mansions, you know the deal. The media has basically trained us to think that wealth is all about this flashy, high-consumption lifestyle that we see on TV.
Well, the groundbreaking research in this book shows that this image, it's pretty much a myth. The reality of who millionaires actually are and how they really live their lives is a whole different story. And here is the first bombshell. Get this. The vast majority of millionaires, we're talking a staggering 80 to 85%, are self-made. They didn't get a huge inheritance. They built their wealth, a lot of them from really modest beginnings. So let's meet the real millionaire. It's time to forget all those stereotypes. We're talking about people who have quietly, methodically achieved financial independence. And yeah, like the title says, they could literally be living right next door to you. And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of it. We're taught that wealth means a high income and spending a ton of money. But the reality? True wealth is about a high net worth, which comes from high savings. You know, it's the difference between leasing a brand new luxury car to look wealthy versus driving a perfectly good 6 or 8-year-old car because you are wealthy and you care more about your financial security than what other people think. So, what do these folks have in common? Well, for starters, they consistently live on less than they make. It's a non-negotiable for them. They avoid consumer debt like the plague, and they are meticulous planners. They actually track their spending. But the big one? They're way more interested in watching their net worth grow than they are in impressing their neighbors. And, interestingly enough, a lot of them own their own small, often boring businesses. So, this brings us to the actual formula for building wealth. And I'll give you a little spoiler. It has surprisingly little to do with how big your paycheck is. The single most important number you need to know is your net worth. That is the real score. It's not about whether you have a 6-figure salary, it's about what you actually keep and what you own after all your debts are paid off. Honestly, just shifting your focus from your income to your net worth is the first major step in adopting that millionaire mindset. So how do they build that net worth? You know, the path is actually pretty simple. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it is simple. First, you just have to spend less than you make. Obvious, right? But then you save an aggressive chunk of that. And we're talking 20, 30, even up to 50% of your income. You invest that money consistently, month in and month out, and then you let the magic of time and compound interest do all the heavy lifting for you. This quote from the research really just sums it all up perfectly. You can earn a massive salary and still be totally broke if you spend it all. It's the discipline, that habit of saving and investing month after month, year after year that truly builds a fortune. And that leads us to probably the most critical part of this whole thing. It's not about having some secret stock tip or being a Wall Street genius. It's all about your behavior. It's about cultivating the millionaire mindset. The first key behavior, it's all about mastering delayed gratification. It's that conscious choice to say no to the expensive vacation or the brand new car today so that you can fund an investment account that's going to buy you your freedom for decades to come. Second, they see being frugal as a virtue, not as some kind of punishment. Being frugal isn't about being cheap. It's about being strategic. It's about deciding where your resources, your hard-earned money, should go. And for them, it's about financial independence, not a closet full of designer stuff. And third, they have a long-term focus. They aren't just thinking about next month's bills. They're thinking about the next 10, 20, even 30 years. Every major financial decision they make gets weighed against its impact way down the road. They're playing chess with their money, not checkers. I want you to let this one sink in for a second. Your habits are more powerful than your IQ. Your personal discipline is more important than getting some lucky break. Becoming wealthy is almost always the direct result of your daily actions, just repeated over a very long period of time. Okay, this is all great in theory, but let's make it tangible. The book is filled with these real-life stories, but let's just create a quick profile based on the research. Let's call him the engineer from Ohio, a totally regular guy with a good, solid, middle-class job. So look how it works. His frugality, The simple act of driving a 10-year-old car kept his expenses incredibly low. His discipline, saving a huge 30 to 40% of every single paycheck, allowed him to build up his investment capital. And his consistency, just investing that money wisely over 3 decades, resulted in a net worth of over $3 million. No lottery ticket, no secret inheritance, just simple habits executed flawlessly year after year.
So what does this all mean for you? How can you apply this? Let's distill everything we've talked about into a clear blueprint, the absolute key takeaways you should remember from all this. All right, here's what you've got to remember. Number 1, focus on your net worth, not just your salary. 2, remember that millionaires are usually just ordinary people with extraordinary financial habits. 3, the real keys are discipline, frugality, and planning. 4, as you start to earn more money, you have to avoid lifestyle inflation. That's the silent wealth killer. And finally, and maybe most importantly, remember that your behavior, your daily choices, is the most powerful financial tool you will ever have. So there it is. The path is laid out. It's not some complex secret. The real question isn't about knowing what to do. It's about having the discipline to actually do it, day in and day out, especially when no one is watching. So, are you?
Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the biggest myths about money. We're going to explore the one habit that really separates the truly wealthy from people who just look the part. So let's get into it. Okay, when I say the word millionaire, what's the first image that pops into your head? Is it a flashy sports car, a huge mansion, designer everything? For most of us, that's the picture we've been sold. But what if I told you that picture is almost completely wrong? Yeah, the common idea of wealth is all about high spending. It's about the stuff you can see. The reality, though, is often invisible. It's not the cars sitting in the driveway that matters. It's the value of the investment portfolio humming away in the background. It's way less about spending and way more about owning things that grow your money. And that brings us to our first big idea. We're going to uncover the financial habits of the millionaire you don't even notice. You know, the one who might be living right next door, who you'd never guess is actually incredibly wealthy. You know, after decades of research into what makes wealthy people tick, a really surprising truth comes out. The cornerstone of building wealth isn't some massive paycheck or getting lucky on a stock. Nope. It's a simple and, honestly, often misunderstood habit: frugality. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much you make, it's all about how much you keep. But what does being frugal actually mean? I'm willing to bet it's not what you think. Let's dig in and see how this simple idea becomes a powerhouse financial strategy. See, frugality isn't about being cheap or depriving yourself. Not at all. It's a mindset that's all about efficiency. It's about making smart, conscious choices to get the most value, the most use, the most satisfaction out of every single rupee you spend, always keeping an eye on that big, long-term goal of financial freedom. And this slide right here shows the crucial difference. Being cheap is all about paying the lowest price right now, even if it means you're buying junk. Frugality, on the other hand, is about maximizing value for the long haul. A frugal person might actually spend more on a quality pair of shoes that will last for years, while a cheap person buys the pair that falls apart in 6 months. One's a wealth strategy, the other is just a price tag. To really see how powerful this is, let's walk through a quick scenario. We've got 2 people, same job, same great income, but they end up in 2 completely different financial worlds. Okay, let's meet our 2 accountants. Both of them earn a very respectable $120,000 a year. The high-spending accountant does what most people do. They spend what they make, leaving almost nothing. But the frugal accountant, they make a different call. By choosing to live on $70,000, they free up a massive $50,000 every single year to save and invest. And here it is, the absolutely stunning result of that one simple choice, repeated over and over. Thanks to the magic of compounding, where your money starts making its own money, the frugal accountant's $50,000 a year has exploded into a huge net worth. The high-spending accountant? Well, they have very little to show for 2 decades of hard work. It's proof. The habit, not the income, is what builds real wealth. So what happened to that other accountant? They fell into a super common trap called lifestyle creep. It's that natural urge we all have to spend more as we earn more. You get a raise, so you get a nicer car. You get a bonus, and suddenly you're looking at bigger houses. The wealthy learn to fight this. They see a raise not as a chance to upgrade their lifestyle, but as more fuel for their investment engine. Okay, so we get the what and the why. So now let's get down to the how. How do they actually do it? Let's open up the playbook that these frugal millionaires use every day. The whole playbook is actually a really simple but incredibly powerful engine. It all starts with spending less than you earn. That creates a surplus. That surplus isn't just leftover money. It's capital, it's fuel. You then put that fuel to work by investing it, and that investment grows and creates even more fuel. It's a cycle that feeds itself. That's the real engine of wealth. And this whole engine runs on a specific kind of psychological fuel. It's having the discipline to choose a bigger reward tomorrow over a small pleasure today. That's delayed gratification. It's being totally immune to what your friends are buying. You just don't care about keeping up. It's a mindset that says, I'm going to buy less stuff, but the stuff I do buy is going to be worth it because every dollar has a job to do for your future. And you can see this mindset in their day-to-day habits. They drive reliable, modest cars because a car is just a tool, not a trophy. They treat high-interest debt like it's the plague because they know it's just stealing from their future wealth. And maybe most importantly, they track where their money is going because you can't control what you don't measure. It's that simple. So when you put all of this together, it just forces you to completely rethink your whole idea of what wealth really looks like. This quote just nails it. The loudest person in the room is almost never the wealthiest. Real wealth isn't what you spend, it's what you own. It's measured quietly on a balance sheet, your assets minus your liabilities, a number most people will never, ever see. Ultimately, every time you spend money, you're making a choice between one of two goals. You can use that money to buy status symbols, which is like a constant leak in your financial bucket, or you can use that money to build your net worth, which creates real independence in the freedom to actually live life on your own terms. So, I'll just leave you with this final thought. The next time you're about to spend some money, just pause and ask yourself this one simple question. Is this rupee buying me a temporary item, or is it buying me a tiny piece of my future freedom? The answer to that question, repeated over a lifetime, is the real secret. Thanks for listening. All right, let's jump right into a really wild and honestly pretty uncomfortable idea. We're all raised to believe that helping our family with money is one of the best things we can do. It's an act of love, right? But what if that help, given with the absolute best intentions, was actually the number one thing holding them back from building real wealth? Yeah, let's get into this paradox. So if I asked you straight up, what's the biggest threat to your financial future? You'd probably say, a market crash, making a bad investment, maybe even high taxes. And those are all legit risks. But years and years of research into how millionaires actually build their fortunes points to something way closer to home. It turns out the real threat, the thing that can quietly and completely derail a person's financial life, isn't some big, scary monster out in the world. It's often sitting right across from you at the dinner table. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's a total game changer. Okay, so first things first, we have to tear down a huge myth we all live with. The idea that giving financial support is always a good thing. We're taught that, of course, love and money should mix when it's family. But the hard data? It tells a completely different story. I mean, just let that sink in. This is the bombshell conclusion from Thomas Stanley and William Danko, the guys who wrote The Millionaire Next Door. After studying thousands of wealthy families, they found that the financial help we give, thinking we're providing a safety net, often ends up destroying the very discipline and grit someone needs to become wealthy in the first place. The researchers actually gave this whole phenomenon a name. And it's a bit of a clinical, almost chilling name, really, because its effects are just so predictable and so damaging. They call it the silent wealth killer. And here it is, economic outpatient care, or EOC for short. This is when parents are constantly giving big financial gifts to their adult kids who are perfectly healthy and capable of earning a living on their own. It looks like help, it feels like love, but in reality it functions more like a long-term dependency program. And look, we're not talking about a one-time gift for a wedding or help during a real honest-to-God emergency. No, EOC is a pattern. It's paying their rent every single month. It's funding that new car they can't actually afford. It's covering their credit card bills when they overspend. It's always being the bank they can run to when they mess up. Does any of this sound a little familiar? And this is the core of the paradox right here. It's just nuts. You'd think that the more money parents pour into their kids' lives, the more wealth the kids would build. It just makes sense, right? But the research shows the exact opposite. It's like a bizarre seesaw. The more financial help that gets piled on one side, the lower their actual net worth sinks on the other. That help is an anchor, not a life raft. So what happens is, this economic outpatient care ends up creating this incredible split. It can literally send two siblings, raised in the exact same house, down two completely different roads in life. So on one path, you get the kid who receives all the EOC. They become what the researchers call a dependent consumer. They get used to a nice lifestyle, they have really high consumption habits, but almost zero financial discipline. And on the other path, you have the kid who gets nothing. They become an independent builder. They're frugal, they're disciplined, and they learn to rely on themselves. Now, this isn't just some theory. The research is packed with real stories. Let's look at one classic case study from the book. It's about a millionaire architect and his two sons, and it just lays this whole dynamic out perfectly. So you have son A, the builder. He was completely on his own. He lived way below his means, saved his money, and never asked for a penny. Then you have son B, the consumer. He was living this super lavish lifestyle that he totally couldn't afford, and he was constantly going back to mom and dad for bailouts, which they always gave him because they loved him. They were helping the wrong son. And the final result? It's absolutely staggering. By the time they were both in their 40s, son A, the one who got zero help, was a millionaire. Son B, the one who got constant financial care packages from his parents, had a net worth of zero. A big fat zero. The parental help didn't just fail to lift him up, it actively dragged him down. Okay, so if that's the problem, what's the solution? How do people who build their own wealth avoid this massive trap with their own kids? Well, they tend to operate by a very clear, very strict set of rules. You could almost call it their prime directive for creating financial independence. So what's the thinking here? It's really not about being stingy or unloving. It's about teaching responsibility. The foundation of it all is simple. When you're an adult, you pay your own bills. You fund your own lifestyle. Your household has to stand on its own 2 feet. And the parent's bank account, it is not a human ATM for their kids' lifestyle upgrades. And this quote just perfectly sums up the whole philosophy. Giving money to someone who has no financial discipline isn't a gift. It's a burden. You're just giving them more rope to tangle themselves up with. It enables bad habits, and it stops them from ever developing the confidence and the resilience that comes from standing on your own. And that brings us to one of the biggest, most painful mistakes that loving, well-meaning parents make. They accidentally create a family system that rewards all the wrong behaviors. It's a trap that the researchers have a pretty provocative name for. They call it affirmative action family style. And what they mean by that is this toxic dynamic where the kid who is the least responsible with money gets the most parental resources, the most worry, the most attention, and ultimately, the most cash. I mean, think about it, right? The kid who overspends and gets into debt, they get a bailout. The kid who saves their money and lives within their means, they get ignored. They're actually punished for being independent because they don't need the help. This system doesn't just create dependency, it creates massive resentment between siblings. So how do you completely flip that script? Well, wealthy families who successfully raise independent kids don't just avoid the traps, they are proactive. They actively teach financial independence right from the start. Let's take a look at their playbook. You can see it's a clear progression, right? It starts really early, teaching kids the difference between needs and wants, and that money is something you earn, not something you're just given. Then, as they get older, the expectations become crystal clear. You pay your own rent. You fund your own life. And number 5 is the big one, and honestly, the hardest one for most parents. No bailouts for bad decisions. You have to learn from your own mistakes. Now, this doesn't mean they never ever give money. They do, but the giving is strategic. It's targeted. It's an investment in education. Or it's a way to reward good behavior, like matching their savings dollar for dollar. Maybe it's seed money for a business idea they've actually researched and planned out. But here's the absolute key. The money is only given after they have proven they can be responsible with it, not before. So let's wrap this all up. What's the bottom line here? It's that real help, true help, is about building independence, not dependence. It's about using money strategically to reward discipline, not just to patch up problems caused by a lack of it. Because that constant safety net, as loving as it seems, can actually smother the ambition a person needs to succeed. The goal at the end of the day is to raise a capable adult, not a pampered consumer. So I'll leave you with this one question to think about. It applies whether you're a parent, a kid, a friend, anybody. The next time you're about to give or receive money, just pause and ask, is this transaction funding a more capable, independent future, or is it just financing a dependent present? The answer to that question really does make all the difference. Thanks so much for tuning in. You know, we're all taught that landing that big, high-paying job is the golden ticket to getting rich. But what if that's not just wrong? What if that idea is the very thing holding you back from actually building real wealth? Okay, let's get into it and tear apart one of the biggest myths in personal finance. So let's just start with a really simple question. Imagine you're a surgeon and you're pulling in $400,000 a year. Does that automatically make you rich? Now, most of us would probably say, yeah, absolutely. But the research we're going to look at today tells well, a shockingly different story. Just look at this. This is a real-life comparison from the research. On one side, you have a welder who built his own business and ended up with a net worth of $4 million, all while living a pretty modest, debt-free life. Then, on the other side, you have our surgeon. Yeah, he's earning the big bucks, but his net worth is less than $200,000 because he's just drowning in high expenses and debt. How is that even possible? This one comparison right here is the key to the entire high-income myth. And that brings us right to our first major point. We need to unpack this whole high-income myth and show you why that huge paycheck you might be chasing could actually be a financial trap. The source material we're looking at is so blunt about this. The single biggest misunderstanding about wealth is that high-income jobs just automatically turn people into millionaires, and that is just flat-out false. You see, income isn't the key factor in building wealth. It's your behavior and the kind of career choices you make. So why do so many people earning a ton of money fail to build any real wealth? Well, the research calls it the high-income trap. See, as your income skyrockets, so do your lifestyle expenses. You start buying things based on status, the fancy car, the huge house. And that leads to this crushing debt, student loans, mortgages, car payments. Then you add in the high social expectations from your circle, and the fact that you have literally no time to actually manage your money, well, you've got the perfect recipe for just treading water financially, no matter how much you earn. Okay, so if a giant salary isn't the answer, then what is? Well, this leads us to the big reveal, really. It's the self-employment secret. This is the hidden path that most millionaires actually use to build their fortunes. So, who are these millionaires for real? Well, when the researchers broke it all down, they found that a massive number of them are small business owners or self-employed professionals. It's not the high-flying corporate execs or even the doctors and lawyers who make up the biggest slice of the pie. It's the entrepreneurs. So why does going into business for yourself win? Well, it all comes down to control and equity. When you own the business, you control your income and your costs. Your earnings aren't just tied to the hours you work, you can scale things up. You get huge tax advantages. And maybe most importantly, you're building equity, a real asset that you own, not just trading your time for a paycheck. And what kind of businesses are we talking about here? I want you to forget the glamorous tech startups. Just look at this list. We're talking about contractors, dry cleaners, accountants, auto repair shops. These are practical, down-to-earth businesses that generate real cash flow. They are, for lack of a better word, kind of boring. And hey, that is not an insult. This quote from the research just sums it up perfectly. Millionaires prefer boring, steady, profitable niches. They choose what makes money over what looks impressive every single time. Okay, so knowing you need a business is one thing, but what kind of business? Well, that brings us to the core strategy here, finding your wealth niche. This is all about how millionaires learn to dominate their market, not just compete in it. So what exactly is a wealth niche? Well, think of it like this. It's a super specific, focused corner of the market where your unique skills are really valuable, where you don't have a ton of competition, and because of that, you can charge what you're worth. The goal is to be a big fish in a small, but very profitable pond.
Let's make this real. Instead of being just another general dentist competing with everyone on every corner, you become the go-to dentist in your city who specializes in cosmetic implants. Suddenly, people are seeking you out, they trust your expertise, and they are more than willing to pay a premium for that special skill.
Or here's another great example from the research. You're not just any financial advisor. You are the financial advisor who understands the unique financial problems and opportunities that doctors face. See? Your niche is defined by your customer, and that creates instant trust and a powerful referral machine. And this choice to specialize, to own a business, to be boring, it's not just a business strategy. It's actually driven by a totally different value system. And that brings us to our next section, control over prestige. When you put these two mindsets side by side, the difference is it's night and day. The wealthy person values control, independence, and autonomy more than anything. They'd seriously rather earn a bit less in a business they own. The high-income consumer, though, they're driven by prestige, status, and what other people think. They chase that high salary, but they have zero control over their own financial destiny.
So how do you actually start to develop this mindset? Well, it all starts with asking the right questions about your own career path, which is exactly what our final section is about, the millionaire career mindset.
The very first question a future millionaire asks themselves is this: does this path give me independence? Not how much will I earn, but how much control will I have? It's a complete shift in priorities. Next, they get down to business. Can I control my costs, and can I control my pricing? In a corporate job, the answer to that is almost always no. In a business you own, the answer is yes. And that, right there, is the heart of financial power.
And finally, we get to the most important question of all. Does this path build wealth? An asset, equity, something that can grow even when I'm not actively working? Or does it just give me an income? That distinction, well, it changes everything.
Okay, let's wrap this all up with the key takeaways. First, ownership, not income, is what really creates wealth. Second, don't be afraid of boring businesses. They're often the most profitable. Third, your independence and your market niche matter way more than your salary. And finally, always choose what's financially effective, not what looks socially impressive.
If you remember just one single thing from all this, make it this. Millionaires build wealth by choosing careers where they can control their income, limit their expenses, and completely dominate a profitable niche. It's a simple formula, but it is incredibly powerful.
So, I'll leave you with this question to really think about. Take a hard look at your own career, at the path you're on right now. Is it just a path to an income, or is it truly a foundation for building lasting wealth?
Have you ever really wondered how regular people become millionaires? I'm not talking about the lottery winners or the tech founders we see in the news. I mean the people you see every day. Okay, let's just dive right into this, because today we are pulling back the curtain on how real sustainable wealth is actually built. And I'm telling you, it is probably not what you think. So meet Linda and Robert. They look pretty normal, right? I mean, they could be your neighbors or maybe someone you'd bump into at the grocery store. There is absolutely nothing about them that screams, "I'm wealthy." And yeah, their lives looked exactly like you'd expect. She was a school teacher and he worked as a postal technician. Their household income, pretty modest. Their lifestyle was totally unassuming, no flashy cars, no designer clothes, just a quiet, ordinary life. But, and this is a big but, here's where their story takes a wild turn. By the time they hit age 55, their net worth was over $2.8 million. I'm going to say that again, $2.8 million. Let that sink in for a second. A school teacher and a postal tech, multi-millionaires, which of course leads to one very obvious question. How in the world did they pull that off? It wasn't some high-flying career, it wasn't a lucky inheritance, and it definitely wasn't some risky overnight stock pick. The answer is actually so much simpler and, frankly, way more profound than any of that. You see, Linda and Robert are perfect examples of what researchers call the millionaire next door. And the core idea here is a total game changer. Building wealth has almost nothing to do with the size of your paycheck and everything to do with how you behave with your money. So the millionaire next door isn't someone who looks rich. That's the whole point. There's someone who behaves in a way that creates wealth. They look ordinary on the outside precisely because their focus isn't on appearances. It's on their financial habits day in and day out. So what are those extraordinary behaviors? What's the secret sauce? Well, it turns out there's a surprisingly clear blueprint, a set of core habits that are just consistently followed by people who build real, lasting wealth. All right, get ready for this, because this first habit is a real eye-opener. Most of these millionaires next door, even after they're wealthy, live on just 50 to 60% of what they bring in. Think about that. That creates this huge gap between what they earn and what they spend. And that gap, that's the raw material for building wealth. And this right here, this illustrates the most critical shift in their entire way of thinking. See, most people spend their money first and then, hope to save whatever's left over at the end of the month. But the wealthy, They flip that script completely. They save and invest first. They treat it like their most important bill, and then they live on what's left. It's proactive, not reactive. It's a choice, not an afterthought. And this all builds into the full blueprint. It starts with that big one. Spend less than you earn. Then, save before you spend. Pay yourself first. Next, they are masters at avoiding lifestyle inflation. So as their income goes up, their spending stays pretty much the same. Then, they invest consistently and patiently. We're talking simple, broad market funds, not chasing hot stocks. And finally, they keep debt incredibly low. They see it as a huge risk, not a tool for buying stuff they can't afford. But here's the thing, just knowing the blueprint isn't enough. Following it day after day requires more than just willpower. It actually requires a fundamentally different way of thinking about money. The actions are just a symptom of the mindset. So here's the crucial difference. For the truly wealthy, money is a tool. It's a tool for buying financial security, for buying independence, for buying peace of mind. It is not for social display. They're focused on buying their freedom, not trying to impress the neighbors with a new car or some flashy brand. They're playing a completely different game. And this quote, man, it just nails the psychology. They have mastered the art of delayed gratification. They are always willing to sacrifice a small pleasure today for a much, much greater security tomorrow. This discipline, honestly, is their financial superpower. Okay, I know what you might be thinking. That sounds like a ton of discipline. I'm not sure I have that much willpower. And you're right, it is. But here's the truly smart move. They don't just rely on raw willpower. They build systems that make good financial behavior automatic. They make it the default. Because here's the secret weapon. Automation is the antidote to emotional sabotage. We all have those moments, right? The impulse to splurge, the panic when the market drops. Well, when your financial decisions are automatic, you can't get in your own way. The system protects you from your worst emotional instincts. And the system itself is it's beautifully simple. Check this out. Your paycheck arrives. Step 2, an automatic transfer immediately moves a set amount to your investment and savings accounts before you can even touch it. And step 3, you just learn to live on the rest. Your most important goals are being funded without you lifting a finger. They also use these really simple but powerful rules, kind of like mental guardrails to govern their spending. For example, never buy a luxury item unless you could pay for it 3 times over in cash. This isn't about being cheap. It's a stress test to make sure one big purchase doesn't sink your long-term goals. Or another big one, only upgrade your lifestyle like a bigger house, using passive income from investments, not your salary. See, that forces you to build assets before you increase your spending. It's brilliant. So, after looking at the habits, the mindset, the systems, what if we could boil all of this down to a single elegant formula? Because there really are no secrets or magic tricks. It's just a powerful, predictable equation. So, what's in the formula? Well, it all starts right here with discipline. This is the foundation. It's the conscious choice to live below your means, to practice that delayed gratification. This is the engine that creates the savings gap you need to even get started. But discipline by itself isn't enough. You have to multiply it by the most powerful force in finance, time. Wealth isn't built overnight. It's the result of good habits applied over decades, letting the incredible magic of compounding turn small, steady actions into a massive outcome. And then we add the next crucial multiplier, consistency. This is huge. This isn't something you do for a month or a year when you feel motivated. It's about repeating these boring, disciplined behaviors month after month, year after year, without fail, even when it feels slow or when the markets are scary. It's the steady rhythm of wealth. And that brings us to the complete final formula. Wealth equals discipline times time times consistency, all multiplied by simplicity. The process isn't complex. It's not a secret. It's about doing very simple things exceptionally well for a very long time. And that brings us to the final crucial question I want you to ask yourself. When you look at your own financial life, are your daily habits quietly building real, lasting wealth? Or are they just building the appearance of it? Because the answer to that one question will without a doubt determine your financial future.